think we're live.
Are we?
We're not really sure. We think we're live.
Okay, here we go. Let's see if it's working.
Mine says,
I see you.
Look at Karen Mills and her technology skills.
I know. We don't know how long we'll be here, but we're here for now.
We're magically here. It's great.
Hey, everybody. It's Karen Mills with Karen Morgan. How you doing, Karen Morgan?
I am good. It's a lovely day here in Maine. It's not snowing right at the moment. It could change at any time, but so far so good today.
It can change at any time, and it's May, almost May. And you're still getting snow?
We got some snow last week, and it was just rude. It's at this point, the snow is just rude. But I do have a fire going in my fireplace in here. So anyway, it's okay. It's eventually it'll be summer.
Snow in late April is rude, and even here in Tennessee, it was really cold this morning, and I thought it was hateful of Mother Nature to make me dig out my fur-lined sweatpants. So.
There's never a day in Maine that I don't have on fur-lined sweatpants.
You're from Georgia, right?
Exactly. No, I was born and raised in Georgia. I've lived in Maine 25 years now.
Wow.
Y'all can tell because I sound different. But I met my husband on a blind date and I moved up to Maine. That's how I got here.
Really? Yeah. On a blind date?
A blind date, the last blind date I ever had. It was good. Yeah, and I was actually in Atlanta. I was practicing law in Atlanta, and I didn't think I would stay in Maine. Like I was like, oh, I'll move up there and pretend to like it, and then I'll make him move back down to South. And then I ended up liking Maine a whole lot because it's a very interesting place. Other than the fact that it might snow on May the 1st, everything's great. So it's a nice place.
What now? You met him on a blind date, and you were a lawyer in Atlanta. What kind of law did you study?
I did criminal defense.
Really?
Yeah, my old law firm. I don't know if anybody's watching the McMillions case on HBO. That was a recent thing. That was my old law firm, Garland, Samuel and Loeb. So I did criminal defense work, and then when I moved to Maine, I continued to do criminal defense work, but the cases in Maine were very different there. We have crime here, but it's hilarious when we have crime here. We had this woman who had a Zumba studio that she turned into a prostitution ring. That's the stuff that's what we have.
Different.
A little different. So,
yeah.
But so have you always lived in Nashville? I mean, in Tennessee, Karen?
Yeah, I'm in Chattanooga. I have, I played basketball here at UT Chattanooga, but I'm from Cleveland, Tennessee originally, which is about 30 miles up the road. And then I lived in Atlanta for 18 years. So that's when I started comedy, was at the Punchline in Atlanta.
Oh, I remember the Punchline very well. I wasn't doing comedy back then, but we used to go to the Punchline a lot. That was so great. So I didn't realize, where in Atlanta did you live? What part of town?
Well, I lived 2 or 3 places, but Dunwoody, Alpharetta area, Norcross, in there.
Very, very good.
Yeah, when I first moved there in the early 80s, I was in Stone Mountain for a little while, and then so I moved around over the time I was there, but that's where I started my comedy career. I was kind of lost after basketball. I was just kind of trying to find myself, and I took some acting classes, and every time I would see Johnny Carson and he would have a comedian on, I would think, I really think I could do that. And finally, I got the courage to go to open mic, and the manager at the Punchline at the time, he said, I really think you could do it, but you've got to learn to write your own material, because all I knew was how to tell a joke.
Yeah.
So I took a class, and then went back to the Punchline and got hired to open, and it just kind of went from there.
Oh, that's great. We were talking about how people get started. So you started a lot earlier than I did. I started kind of out of necessity to get out of my house with 3 kids. I was still sort of practicing law, but then after my second child was done, I stayed home, and then we had the third. So then I'm home with 3 babies, and I needed literally a day to get out of the house once a week.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm going to take a class. I'll take cooking or what. And so, but there was a comedy class offered at the local club here in Portland, Maine. And so I took my class, and that's kind of how I started too, was with a class, which was
Oh,
great fun. I didn't expect to do it full time really, but I fell in love with, and I think you're a really good writer too. I fell in love with the writing process. I think that to me is what's so fun about it.
it is. It's really rewarding when you can write something and put it on stage and then get a laugh. I mean,
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
it's a fun process. I think I love it.
And I also love that you are a college athlete. I mean, that's just so impressive. And not to, you're not the typical 6'4" college basketball player,
No, I'm
which
not even
makes me,
close to
it's
that.
more impressive to me because you must have been a scrappy basketball player.
I was scrappy, that's for sure. No, I was 5'2", but in I ball handling and passing was my thing. So I was point guard, and yeah, it was great. I love my athletic years. I played back in the 1800s, and but it was, everyone thought I would coach, and I just didn't love coaching the way I love playing. So
Yeah.
that's why I think even on some level, even as a point guard, I entertain the crowd. I mean, I'd rather give a great pass as a score because it would get the crowd.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that is. It's a early part of showmanship anyway.
It was, and I used to feel bad about saying that because it made me feel like I was a hot dog. But it really, I mean, I really wasn't. It was just, I just appreciated the involvement of the crowd, and
Yeah.
yeah.
So when you first started going to the Punchline and doing your stand up there when you were new, were you nervous when you first started?
Oh my gosh! And back then, I mean, comedy was booming, and there would be like 30 people sign up for open mic on a Tuesday night, and
Yeah.
usually 6 would be chosen to go up. And if my name was on it, I was just so sick I could die. I was scared, and I would spend the whole time before my time to go on stage, I was in the bathroom, and then but if my name wasn't on it, I wanted to cry.
Oh,
So it was the weirdest thing
yeah.
because I wanted up so bad, but then it scared me to death.
And we're still doing it. Even me.
Yeah, still doing it. Don't get as scared anymore. Now I get more scared doing Facebook Live.
Small baby steps. I'm just so impressed that we're doing this, that we're
I
on board
know. I mean,
technology.
just
By the
like
way, everybody, Karen did all the technology. I just sat here and drank my Coke. Over here.
but we didn't know if we would actually be live or not by the time this was over. And I said, I said, I've done all that I know to do. And so Karen decided that needs to be a t-shirt.
Done all I know to do. It's just going to be our theme for the rest of the month, I think, at this point.
I think
So
that
after you did the Punchline, I know it. I know, because by the way, Karen and I know each other, but we haven't known each other for a long time, and we know each other as comedy acquaintances, and we have lots of mutual friends. But so we don't know some things about each other, which is kind of fun to do this. So after you did your Punchline shows, eventually I know you went on tour with Brenda and Leanne, or was there something in between before you went on tour with them? Did you stay in Atlanta or did you move first?
no, I was I was touring clubs and doing all that because I had been in comedy for about 9 years when they started Southern Fried Chicks, and
Right.
me and Leanne Morgan and Etta Mae were original Southern Fried Chicks, and so we toured for a couple years with that group, and then Leanne and I have worked for years on and off together with different comedy tours.
Yeah. And Leanne is hilarious. And it's always so funny because it's Leanne Morgan and Karen Mills, and my name is Karen Morgan. So occasionally people get confused. I'm like, no, that's them. And it's really confusing. But that's how I first found out about you, was when I was doing Nick at Night with Leanne.
I was going to say you
Yeah.
did Funniest Mom
Yeah.
with Leanne, and y'all, yeah, that was
And that was really my first thing. Like, I did that Nick at Night thing right after my graduation class from the comedy workshop.
wow, that was quick.
So my teacher in that class, Tim Farrell, was a really nice guy, and he said, "I'm going to send your tape in to this Nick at Night thing." And I'm like, "Okay." I didn't know what it was, but that experience doing that and meeting, what was great about that, particularly that first season, was meeting all the other moms who, and a lot of them were professional comics. Some weren't, but some were. And
Right.
just meeting everybody like Leanne and sort of having this camaraderie amongst all of us. It started really a big giant group, and then they narrowed it to 7 of us. And it was just a really good experience that I took from that. Oh, this is something I could do full time and kind of enjoy, and still also be home with my kids, you know. And then at some point I was traveling too much, and my husband was like, "How many days are you going to be gone this time?"
Yeah, I might need to have another blind date. Yeah.
Exactly. He had to rectify a few things after that. Anyway, that was my first experience of meeting other female comics in the business, and also learning that, what a great kinship we all have as female comics.
We really do. And you just don't meet that many. I mean, it's so male dominated. Um, and even when you meet like something Nick at Night, Funniest Mom, that kind of thing, for 2 women to work in a club is
Oh,
almost unheard of.
yeah.
I've always said every man's dream to have 2 women in one night except a comedy club owner.
Well, the first thing that was said to me, because I came from a law background, having been a trial attorney, where people are on their best P's and Q's during the workday. And then I started working in comedy clubs, and a local owner said to me, I was moving up the ranks, and I was sort of like, okay, well, when can I be the headliner? And the man said to me, and I quote, "Tits will never close a show in this room." And I was like, so first, for him to say that word to me as a professional person, I was like, okay, first, there's so many things happening wrong with what you just said to me. And I think I was speechless when he said
I
it.
bet.
After he said it to me, and I started talking to other women, and they're like, "Oh no, I've heard worse, and this is what is said a lot." So I got a rude awakening on what it was like to be a female comedian right away.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's as bad as it used to be. I hope,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that is just, And did he know you were a lawyer?
Yeah, he did. I mean, could have cared less. It was an interest. Like I said, it was eye opening. And then at a certain point, I realized, okay, it is a good old boys club. How will I maneuver? And then I ended up maneuvering to doing more of the theaters and performing arts centers, and also doing fundraisers and corporate events where it's, and not to say the comedy clubs are bad. They're not. They're wonderful. But for me at that time, it made more sense for me to do the other kinds of shows.
Right. And that's why it was a real blessing, when we got the Southern Fried Chicks and we're able to go to theaters and do those types of venues, because it's such an entirely different atmosphere.
Right, it is. And I know, Karen, I know you do this really well. You do a lot of fundraisers for different charities and things like that. What has been your experience with those?
Oh, they've been terrific. I mean, being a cancer survivor, I do a lot of cancer events, and corporate comedy is one thing. But, but when you do conferences and survivor events, that's such a blessing. I mean, those events are people full of joy for life, and really appreciate humor and living and celebrate life. So that's very different than doing the egg association.
Or the Alabama Association of Funeral Home Directors.
Right. It's a little different vibe. And so I love doing those. I did a women's conference in California a couple years ago, and Maria Shriver was the main keynote at lunch, but I got to do the closing keynote.
Oh, nice.
And so that was, I mean, it's just, 3,000 women. It was terrific.
And you do such a nice job of those, because it does, you're talking about a serious subject that perhaps could be sad, but you're finding joy and positivity, out of I just think that's wonderful. And I applaud you for doing those shows. I know that my corporate stuff, because I was a lawyer, I tend to do a lot of those corporate meetings. And some of them are okay, and then some of them they're like just ready to get to the bar, or they're ready to get to bed. They've been there all day. Some of them are great. It's funny, we remember the sort of bad stories as comics
Right.
more than we remember the really great ones sometimes. But
Oh, a lot of times, it's like you can have, you know, 1,000 people in the audience and you'll find that one that's not
one
laughing. Yeah.
one
Like, what's
person.
wrong with him?
I have a question for you. Tell me about your Grand Ole Opry experience, because that's just such a wonderful thing. I know you've done the Opry a couple times now, at least.
Yes, I've done it now 4 times.
Oh, wow.
And I tell you, I was amazed. It was one of the most rewarding experiences that I've ever had. The people, from the time you walk in the building, the security guard to the biggest star on it, are welcoming. They're always have their dressing room doors open to say hello.
Oh,
It is just the warmest atmosphere you can imagine. And it was, I've always said there's more ego in the back of a comedy club than there is at backstage at the Grand Ole Opry. It was really amazing.
yes, I agree with that.
That's not that that's saying that much, but yeah.
That's such a good thing to hear, because it's just so impressive. I mean, the Opry. As a country music fan myself, when my brother was really into country music when we were in high school, like Conway Twitty, Loretta Lynn, they're sort of old school. Like, we had rabbits that were named after Conway and Loretta, and then Conway and Loretta had
Johnny and June, yeah.
he had all of them. But I went to see the auditorium, and I remember touring that when I was in high school, and just it is such a special, almost sacred place to and I just think performing there would be wonderful. So that's great for you.
Well, thank you so much. Jamie Daly, who's with Daly and Vincent, the bluegrass bluegrass duo, he hit me up on Instagram one night and said, I heard you on XM radio and I would love for you to be on my segment of the Opry.
Oh, no.
And that's how it started. Yeah, and I thought it was like, I looked at the phone and I thought, is this real? Somebody punking me? What is going on? And so I didn't think it was real at first. And then I texted him back and I said, I would love to. And within weeks, he had me on the Opry. I mean, it was just a great metaphor for life, that you never know what's just around the corner.
Right. Always pick up your phone.
True. And you have always been very involved in the Nantucket Comedy Festival, which is a great comedy festival. And I was fortunate enough to do a few years ago when you invited me in. So tell us a little about that.
So I started actually as a performer out there, like the second year they had it. It's been a long time ago. Our mutual friend Vic Kinley, who sadly just passed, invited me to come out, and so as a performer. So I went out there. I like what the nonprofit stands for, which is helping kids with their confidence by teaching them stand-up comedy. Basically, it's learning how to stand on stage, and it's basically communication skills. So I liked the message as a parent. And then I also came out there going, everybody, it was a similar thing about the Grand Ole Opry, even the highest headliners to the brand new comics that were out there, everybody was equal. Everybody hung out together as friends. It was just a nice atmosphere. Excuse me. And then a few years ago, their producer left to go do a film festival, and they needed a producer. And they're like, Karen, I know you do producing stuff, would you be interested? And I was like, sure. So I became the producer. So the first year that when you came out for the ladies with and the ladies night that year was my first year producing. And Vic and I, we wanted to add an element that year with a positive message, and then whoever that female comedian was to also perform that night in the big show that night. And so we both thought of you. And so that's how you and I sort of first officially met, even though we had kind of met before. But and I'm not producing anymore, and I don't know if they're gonna have a festival this summer with all the stuff going on. But I still think it's a great nonprofit and a great way for comics to get together and do something good, which is nice. And it was nice that. It's sort of a level playing field out there, which is wonderful. You're away from, there are no agents or managers that come to that. There's no media. So it's just comics. you
It
know,
was a wonderful experience. I
yeah.
really appreciated being a part of it.
Yeah, it was very fun. So we were talking about this yesterday about questions that people always ask us
Mhm.
as comedians. One of them was, where do you get your material? So I will ask you, where do you get your material?
Well, I get my material living life, whether it's something that happens in the grocery store or being diagnosed with cancer. So, it was hard. I was afraid it'd be too hard to use any cancer material in a comedy club. I knew I could use it in the survivor settings because they get it. But a lot of times it makes regular people who hadn't been through cancer uncomfortable. But then I come to learn that everybody has been through it on some level, even if it's with a friend, even if it's a mother, a daughter, or I mean, everyone's been touched by it. You
Yeah,
don't have to have it. And there was a little apprehension to laughing, but because I've been through it, I can
right,
joke about it and people put people at ease with finding the humor. I mean, it's a coping skill. Certainly there's nothing funny about having cancer,
right.
but it's a way of coping. And I do that with everything.
Yeah, and I think it's what it does, which is wonderful that you do, is you give them permission. You give the permission to laugh about it because you have had that experience as personally as anyone can have, and you're able to do that. So I just think that's great. It's
Exactly.
wonderful.
And what about you? Where do you get your material?
It's similar in a similar way, just by looking around my house. I started out because the Nick at Night thing started out. It was all mother stuff, and I had 3 kids under the age of 3, so I was dealing with the
Under
mother
the age
stuff.
of three?
Yeah, we had 3 really quickly. It was planned, but it was a lot. And so when I first started, all my material was about kids and what I was living in at the time. And as I've gotten older and been doing this longer, it's become, I still have the family stuff, which always changes because the kids are older. They're now all in college. So now we're talking about, I'm doing comedy about college tours and
Sure.
that stuff changed. But then I also talk about being from the South and living in Maine. And I people always say, why don't you do lawyer jokes? So I just have never. First of all, I'm still a lawyer, so I don't want to make fun of all the people that worked really hard to be one. And but I do talk about funny cases that I've had as legally
Right.
as delicately as I can, because there's the funny things do happen. And I think what you do so well is it's life observation, and funny things do happen, at the grocery store or in a law office or, just everywhere. And the ability to is sort of verbalize it and let other people share in what you're laughing about. It's, I think that's what I enjoy the most about what we do, is when I'm on stage and I can see people nodding their head, I think that's,
Relating.
yeah, I think that's just the most gratifying thing, because it gives these people a chance to, I know as a parent of teenagers, when I was going through all the really if if I just had some conversations with other parents of teenagers, I was like, okay, they're all like this.
Oh, yeah, right.
Oh, you know so there's just something about being in an audience when you're talking about something that when people it's very gratifying to have them lock on.
And when you see them connect, and sometimes I'll see a wife hit a husband or with her elbow or something, and so you know that you're striking a nerve. So I always
Yes.
like those moments. And we've both done dry bar comedy
Oh
specials.
yes, yeah, you did yours before me. So how was your experience with Dry Bar?
Oh, it was good. It was good. It was. But I was going to ask you if you've had this. If you and I don't read a lot of comments. It's best not to, even though most are positive. I think there's always someone sitting in their parents' basement behind a computer just wanting to be negative.
Yeah.
But I was just curious if you've gotten any tough comments.
Yeah, I had a few. I learned my lesson. I did it. I looked at them twice, and as you said, most of them are kind and nice, and thanks for those people for doing. But you, as the one audience member that you look at, it's the same thing. You lock onto that one comment, and
Sure.
mine was that I was clearly just gone through transgender surgery, and it was was just she's just another transgender comic. And I was like, and then that was the day I stopped reading comments. I'm like, there's so much wrong with what you just said about all of that. So, and why do you feel like you can make that comment? It just told me that just don't read your comments.
And yes, and never in person would they say it, but they feel the freedom,
Right. Yeah.
to say, to be mean. I don't understand why people need to be mean, but some
Yeah.
do. But I had one recently when they released clips and then they released the full special. And some guy said that it was exactly the same material as this Tom guy, this other comic on Dry Bar. So it's exactly the same material. One has copied the other.
Oh.
And so I couldn't help myself. I went on and I said, wow, really? Tom had ovarian cancer? All it was a joke, a couple of jokes about aging, and they weren't even the same jokes, but he lost his car in the parking lot and had a joke about it. And, and I'm like, comics, we write about what we experience.
Right.
If you have, people write about similar topics all the time. That doesn't mean anyone's stealing anything. I before I ever heard of Dry Bar comedy, I was doing that joke. So I don't know who that person is.
Yeah.
Whatever.
But that's part of the writing process, is that there's only so many subjects as human beings and the experience that we have. We're going to talk about aging. We're going to talk about our kids. We're going to talk about, things,
relationships.
So the topics are always going to be a common theme, and that's okay. It's what you do with the topic. And I find interesting when people ask me, who writes your material? I'm like, how could anyone else possibly have written about my dog puking in the middle of
right.
So I think that it's just about the writing process. And I never have a problem if someone talks about the same subject matters as I do. It's what your take is on it, and how you.
Exactly. And you can't keep people from talking about the same subject matter. I mean, that's ridiculous. But what's funny to me is when someone starts fighting on your behalf. I mean, someone jumped on him and had looked him up, knew what profession he was in, and started ripping him a new one. And I thought, oh Lord.
Well, good for them. I'm glad.
I know. I'm like, thanks. That keeps me from.
And you were great with the comeback. Even if I have the time, months, I'm like, what do I say? Like, I've never been good about those quick comebacks. That was a perfect one. Perfect.
Well,
oh my goodness. So we've been chatting a little bit about our current situation, that everybody's staying at home. What are you doing to stay sane right now at home?
I'm doing it right now. I'm talking to I feel like I'm working as hard now as I ever did on the road. It's like, everyone wants you to put out videos or do something, and I'm constantly trying to figure out some new technology, do a TikTok dance. That makes me want to kill myself.
We talked about this yesterday. My kids are just like, Mom, please don't go on the TikTok. Please do not. And the fact that you called it the TikTok is not don't do it. So I have like 3 TikTok videos, and I think that may be it. I may be done. TikTok. I like watching them. But the fact that you even put this, that we're even live right now, is because of you. So you've got new skills. We have gained new skill sets through all of this. It's crazy.
Indeed. I can go live with Zoom on Facebook Live. Now, I screwed it up 2 weeks ago, and it was a total debacle. And then someone messaged me and said, because I was trying to talk with Leanne Morgan, and someone messaged me and said, my husband told me that I didn't understand comedy. Said that you and Leanne not knowing what you're doing is what the bit is. I'm like, no, it wasn't that time.
I have a weekly get together with my high school class. One of my friends, we do this on every Thursday night. Everybody has a cocktail and we're all on there together. But the very first one was literally 25 minutes of people trying to get on. And I ended up taping part of it because it was hysterical. I'm like, just the fact that we're all trying to get on here together is kind of funny.
I know.
I'm sure younger people don't think it's as funny as we do, but I find it hysterical.
It looks like it's maybe here to stay for a while.
Yeah.
So,
I did clean up the back of my office. Everything that was over here is now over here. You just can't see it. I just moved it all.
you just keep scooting things out of the camera frame, redecorating these days.
Well, what do you think in terms of what are your feelings about the future of comedy and where we're heading after all this? I know none of us know the answer to that, but you know.
It changes daily. It seems like every day I think we're going to be back out there by June. And then it's like, we're going to be back out there in 2021. Then I hear something else. And well, maybe by August, maybe by the fall. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think at least what we plan to do is continue writing and continue, staying out there and continue making notes when we go to the grocery store. That stuff, people are still at the grocery store. They look different now, but they're there.
They do look different. A lot easier to go out incognito. Not that I need to, but I'm just saying that anyone who wants to is a little easier to not be recognized if that. I don't like them. I mean, we have to do it, but I don't like the mask because you can't smile at people. You can't see people smiling.
Yeah, I did that the other day. I was at the grocery store and I wanted to smile at this lady, and I was like, if I smile with my eyes real big, will she know I'm smiling, or will I just look weird? Like I was trying to make the smile go up, and then I dropped an onion, and I had my mask on and my gloves, and I dropped an onion, and this man very nicely wanted to pick up the onion and hand it back to me, like he was being helpful. But then we didn't know whether we touch each other with the onion. Like there was, do I touch you or do I put the onion back in this bin or what? And we finally he like dropped it in my hand like a tennis ball. But these new protocols, I think we're all learning, and the best you can do is keep a sense of humor about all of it as best you can.
It's the best you can do with anything, I've decided.
I've done all I know to do.
Well, Karen, it's been so, I've done all I know to do. That's right. Well, it has been great talking to you. I look forward to getting to know you even better.
Yes. Oh no, this is great fun. And it's good for everybody to keep in touch with your friends, keep in touch with your family, do what you got to do to get through all of it. So this has been really fun.
And I know that people enjoy having streaming events to watch and getting to know people better. So hopefully we've brought a little bit of entertainment to everyone watching. And I hope that you stay safe during this next few weeks or however long we have.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, over and out, my friend.
Have a great day, everybody.
Okay, see you soon. Bye-bye.